Hello, people! Okay, so a couple of years ago, I watched an extra Reddit's video about game boundaries, as in the area of the game where it's like, you can't go any further than here because we didn't make an entire planet as a game world, because we only have so much budget and time, and we only need so much to do what the game's actually supposed to be. You know, those existing games. So, yeah, the video is about that, and it's basically about... I'm not going to show the video directly, because after a couple hours of searching, I just can't find it, and I really need to get into moving into the actual production of the video, so I'm not searching for it any longer. But anyway, the whole argument of it is basically that Basically, it's just that, the argument is that you should create boundaries in games which, instead of stopping the player, just point blank, you can't go any further. Instead, there's an explanation for why you can't go further, like, for instance, roadworks or something, if you're in a city-based area. And when I first saw this, I thought it was kind of stupid, and I still kind of do, because these get kind of out of control sometimes. The problem with this is that it's jarring. Like, I remember back when Pokemon Sun and Moon came out, I was bothered by the fact that there's random, inexplicable rows of rocks surrounding each and every beach, which, well, they make no sense. Why is it that at the edge of the beach, or the far edge, just rocks start appearing at the side, then they go out and they curve around, as you can see on the map here, and then they curve around, and then they curve around to the other end of the beach. And why is it that it's like that at every beach in the region, except for an Ultra Sun and Moon, where there's a couple of beaches where you aren't allowed to surf because they're mountain surfing beaches, and they need there not to be rocks blocking the way for you to do that. But aside from those, that's every beach in the region is surrounded by this set of rocks that just coincidentally happens to block off the entire surface area of the beach from letting you access the broader ocean. It's really weird and, to be blunt, stupid, and it makes no goddamn sense. Like, sometimes, yeah, rocks do start to crop up around beaches just because the land underneath is getting higher and higher as you get closer to the land, because a land is just seabed, but above where the water can reach. So that's a thing, but it's never this precise, so it breaks my suspension of disbelief, but I remember thinking that back in the day that the previous pair of games did way better, being those games being Pokemon X and Y, which basically, when we couldn't go any further into the water, instead of having any kind of weird BS like with these rocks, instead it's just, oh, there's slightly darker water, and you can't go here, and it's like, it makes sense because there's no more game, and the character never would go here because they have no motivation to go here. But then that leads us back to the original problem of, it makes no sense, why can't I go further? This is weird and dumb. So, yeah. So that's the whole initial dichotomy setup. So, now I'm going to talk for the rest of the video exclusively about Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom. For our purposes, they might as well be the same game because they have the same map, and I'm going to use them as examples to explore this further. So the sea border in the southeast is nothing to write home about. It's just, you try to sail out and it says you can't go any further, and maybe a bit of wind blows you back. It's essentially the same as the Pokemon X and Y boundary, except it's not as visual. But what I really want to talk about is the border on the north/west sides of the map. Why? It's a giant bottomless pit. Why is there a giant, kilometers wide, and hundreds of kilometers long, bottomless pit at the edge of Hyrule? And why is nobody acknowledging that it exists? And why further is it the case on the other side there's just dead space, just grassy hills, without a single fucking tree on them? This is very much destroying the suspension of disbelief, and yet, there is a reason why I naturally wouldn't go further. Being that there's a giant bottomless pit, how in hell am I supposed to get across this? There isn't even another side, effectively. Like, yeah, it's technically a case of, yeah, you can't go any further because of natural geography, but, like, it's not believable because, again, a massive kilometers long and wide bottomless pit that nobody acknowledges the existence of. It's, frankly, kind of ridiculous. But then if we shimmy on over, just climbing up across the Gerudo Highlands to the other side, we get to the best bit of game boundary in the whole game. So the Gerudo Desert is in the southwestern corner of the map, which means you can't go south or west of there. And so when you walk out into the desert that far, of course, like there's a little message pops up on screen, like when you're going into the ocean, like, oh, you can't go any further. And what also happens is a sandstorm kicks up, and this narratively explains why you can't go any further in a physical sense, because there's a sandstorm blocking your way. You can't figure out how to get any further because you can't see where you're going. Plus, you're being pushed away. But it's also like, yeah, but of course this comes into conflict with what I've said so far quite often, because in both the previous examples I've given of of stuff being explained narratively, I've said it's stupid, like with the rocks in Alola, as well as the giant canyon in like Breath of the Wild. And I was trying to think about what the difference between these two is, and it's like, maybe it's that this is an open world game and it's super realistic, so maybe it feels weird when it happens here, but not in Pokemon X and Y. And after thinking about it for longer, especially after noticing the canyon, I think I realized what it is. The difference between this desert and the canyon is the reasoning's not stupid. Having a multi-kilometer wide and long bottomless pit covering the entire border of a kingdom which nobody acknowledges makes no sense. It's jarring. It's just plain old stupid. Having, say, having weather kick up whenever you try to go past the border is relatively not stupid. That makes sense. So maybe if we were to do this little boundary better, like the boundary of the canyon better, maybe a better way to do that would be to have there be a cliff that's just too high for Link to climb, even with fully maxed out stamina, including extra stamina from elixirs and stamina being saved via the climbing outfit. You know? And/or it could be icy so you always slip down. And/or you could just have it slope up and then, oh, right, a snowstorm starts, and like how there's a sandstorm in the desert, and a snowstorm starts and you can't go any further. Hell, near Eldin it could even be a volcanic ash storm. Of course, I'm kind of impartial to this because it slopes up weirdly. What was the reason again? I don't particularly remember. It's something to do with realism, climates and all that. But yeah, you could feasibly use that as an explanation, either of those as an explanation for why you can't go any further. And while we're at it, considering that this land that's beyond the boundaries is both higher up than Herbra and most of it's further north than Herbra, for the love of God, it should be snowy tundra, not empty open field. And maybe you could put the tiniest amount of detail into it, like maybe a tree every several miles, please. And in Pokemon, in both Sun and Moon and X and Y, a better way they could have done the boundary would have been to have there be currents blowing towards the shore that push you away, like these currents in Oras. And/or it could also be the case that if you try to go too far from the shore, a wave suddenly appears pushing towards the shore as like what's riptides? That's the term. Like riptide could appear and push you further towards the shore. You know. So, in conclusion, basically, having diegetic explanations for why you can't go any further, as to why you can't go any further than the game's boundaries is good, but there's a big caveat to that extra credits ignored in that old video, being that the reason has not to be completely fucking stupid. It has to make sense, it has to not be jarring. In other words, have diegetic explanations, but be subtle about them. So, that's the end of the video. I don't have any more to expand on this. Quick video. Yeah, please hit like, it helps my channel grow, and it costs you nothing, and you clearly enjoyed the video because you watched the whole thing, like 10 minutes at this point, and subscribe if you want to see more. Peace. Okay, so that was a video that I made. It's, yeah. Hey, I'm finishing this on Saturday, so I still have Sunday, so maybe I'll record the audio for next video so I can get it out in a week as opposed to having another 2-week video after, like, at this point, 2 months of taking 2 weeks per video, which I feel a bit embarrassed about with this video just because, like, it's less than 10 minutes long, it took 2 weeks to make it, like, I feel almost lazy, and it's like, with this video, it's like, it's also kind of like our turn to normalcy, because it's like, my process was normal. With the other ones, the process has been kind of disrupted for a while. Like, for the Matrix video, I recorded most of the audio for that back in May. Second Sonic Mania video, I recorded the audio for that as part of the original Sonic Mania video before I was like, this is 30 minutes, I'm breaking this shit up.
for the what's it the last Undertale video, it's like I recorded the audio for that before making the second Sonic Mania video because I was initially planning to have it in between the Sonic Mania videos until the first one Sonic Mania video just blew the fuck up. So yeah, that's that whole thing and how that's all done. I mean, my schedule is still supposed to be every 7 days, but it's like I've been kind of burnt out for the last while. I mean, production on this ran relatively smoothly outside of like, I mean, there's been a lot of times where it's like, oh my god, I fall into a trap of where I typically like my editing works and visuals making tends to work best when I just make them as I go as I edit. But then I'd be like, no, I have to make the visuals first because that's how I used to do it because that worked for Pen. It's a bad habit. It delays a lot of things. Like I could have got this video out virtually a week ago if it wasn't for that. So yeah. Anyway, peace.